the line between that opportunity and now is really the courage to be able to put yourself out there transparently and say, look, we are a board of mostly men, we're a board of mostly Episcopalian, we're a board of mostly individuals from the low country of South Carolina, whatever it may be, but identify that for the organization and understand what you are, because that's the only way to understand what the differences may be that aren't at the table. I see a hand up at Carolyn.
Hi, Marvell.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for having this discussion. It's overdue. So my question is, I think first I have a comment. I think the frustration with a lot of organizations is finding the time to make this happen, because a lot of us are in communities where we have full-time jobs and we're doing a lot of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging piece on the side. And it's very tempting to just check a box. So how do we make this sustainable when we're not really putting the effort? We can't really put the effort in because we have so many other distractions. And I think when that happens, it adds a level of frustration, and people tend to want to give up before the work actually gets started. So what would your advice be for organizations that really are trying to do it, but not really committing to investing in the process?
Yeah. So here's what I would say is that there's a whole bunch of different ways I think you go about it. The thing that comes to mind right now is being able to quantify what it's going to take to do what you want to do. So the example I would give you that if you're talking about, you know, you want to be able to grow the diversity of the resident population within the organization, and you pick out a goal out of the sky because you want to have something to reach towards. So we want to go from 0.25% historically marginalized groups of individuals living here to 5%. Okay, fine. You want to go to 5%. So 5% of your resident population, if it's 100 residents there, it's 5 residents, right? If you go look at your marketing data, how much are you spending per lead per close? Multiply by 5, and that's your start. So the calculator for figuring out how much we could, should, and ought to be spending and putting resources toward this work, it's there, it exists. But if, and we used to call it, how much did it take to make that phone ring? But, if your close rate is 10%, 5%, whatever it may be, and when you add up your marketing budget, it costs, I don't know, $18,000, let's be, really conservative. $20,000 is a round number to get someone to move in. And you want 5 individuals that you've never had in the organization, or that you are seeking that increases the lower numbers that you've historically had. If you can't say, let's devote the actual dollars it takes to close a new resident and multiply that, what we want to see in the impact, if you can't come up with that 5 times 20, which is 100 grand, then what I would say is that that's no different than saying, well, let's cut 100 grand out of the marketing budget because we don't have time. Mm-hmm. So that's my perspective on it, I guess, is that there has to be some way to quantify within the organization how important this is, because if I'm talking about inclusion strategy, which I am, if we're talking about inclusion strategy, we really are talking about something that is as big as the organization. And what does it look like to have resources behind that?
Can I follow that up with, would you use that same type of formula when you're talking about quantifying what you need when it comes to expanding leaders of color in leadership? And I know, just coming from the Leading Age conference, Leading Age did a very good job in being very specific and showing the statistics across the board in aging services, and how the leaders of color, although we're represented in the workforce, we're not represented in leadership. And if those stats you're talking about, 2024 going, if those stats you're talking about in 2044, and we're going to be looking like we are looking population-wise, that needs to change now, because people do want to see people that look like them. If you're trying to recruit people of color into your leadership positions. So, and I know that's been a challenge for a lot of organizations to quantify that, and I'm trying to figure out easier ways for us to do that, because it shouldn't be as hard as it is, because there are really qualified people out there.
Yeah, it is multi-layered, Carolyn, for sure, around does that mean the pipeline and we try to get interns in here? Does that mean trying to grow our own and be more intentful about historically marginalized individuals that are on our staff? What does that look like? And I always go back to, you got to start from where you are. And if you're putting zero resources towards it, then you need to put something and decide where you want to start. And this is the last little bit I'll give to you. The only way you can prove that you started is to have something to measure when you get down the road. So if you started in 2019 and your measurement doesn't roll off your tongue as to what you've been doing, then you really haven't, in my opinion, you really haven't started. And so what are the resources that need to go towards it? So sorry, Lori, and then Monica, I believe, or I'll ask you how to pronounce your name in a moment if I said it wrong. I apologize. Lori.
Thank you very much. Lori Porter with NACA, the National CNA Association. Hi, Kane. Good to see you, and great to be with good people. Marvell, I think in your past life, you were an administrator like me. And I have not been an administrator since the 90s, but I know we did zero back in those days to address any of these situations. But I've noticed in my 27 years working directly with CNAs in this association that this diversity, equity, and inclusion is very much needed on the front line. Just in personal experience, in our board of directors, I have only had 2 non-white CNAs serve on the board of directors. And in our small group, it's been problematic to some degree. How would a care center with a very diverse care force, I don't like to say workforce, but care force, how would they best approach this? Is it better to start at the top or to address the issues that are currently pervasive in our largest employee group?
Really good question. So let me try to understand, Lori. So when trying to attract more individuals, historically marginalized folks, people of color, queer, to being CNAs, how does an organization do that? Do they start at the top, or do they try to develop, at the direct care staff?
Yes, I'm most interested in, how they would best approach the direct care staff in terms of the 4 principles you used of the inclusion.
Gotcha.
Or what did you do to address those?
Yeah. You see me, I'm like moving around in my seat.
Sorry, man.
Details, no. It's not even from discomfort. The details matter, So I will give what I think I'm hearing and try to put it into some context for a conversation. So I think that career ladders. I think that very transparent notions of what the organization is trying to accomplish, because what you don't want to see happen is that the few people in the organization that are of color or gay, out and gay, or whatever identity partner you want to talk about, I guarantee you they've had people come up to them and try to get their advice and their help and their buy-in. I think you still got to start from an engagement standpoint, and how do you understand what that person's needs are? Because if we're talking about groups of individuals that from a societal standpoint have been historically excluded or marginalized, I tend to think that means that what it took for them to get to work that day may be different than someone that is not marginalized. So coming into work and then having on top of that the responsibility of educating others about how you feel about what's going on in the organization it's a burden. And so instead, what I'd say to folks is that you may have champions in your organization. Those champions have a job that you pay them to do. So what is it that you can offer to them that allows them to be a resource to the organization? So some folks look at that as affinity or employee resource groups, but what is it that you can bring together that allows the organization to say to that group or groups of individuals, hey, we recognize there's a gap in perhaps what resources you need to have and what we offer or what is available to you, and how can we help close that gap? But I'll go as far as that, Lori, because you get more specific than that. It really does come down to the details of the organization because every place is absolutely different. So
That's
thanks.
for sure.
And Monique?
Monica.
Monica, gotcha. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Monica.
I'm Monica Acosta, and I work at Landis Homes Retirement Community in Lititz, Pennsylvania. And we are CARF. We do have CARF accreditation for ourselves, I believe, one of two in our area. But and I really want to, our organization has just recently begun, crawl into the DEI journey. It picks up steam and then it slows down and then it picks up steam and then. And I think you've probably answered some of my questions about how to really put some real meat on the bones there about having quantifiable things, and being able to have something to measure. And I know at one of our last DEI meetings, I really challenged them to, okay, what are we doing here? Where are we going? What do we want to do? And I don't know if you had any strategy or ideas with CARF, because this year was the first year I was ever asked anything about DEI for CARF, kind of providing information as we prepare for our next round with surveyors. So, I want to really hold our organization accountable. And so what advice would you give about, okay, if we want to stay with CARF, we really got to prove this. If we want to move and be prepared to serve people in our community, what can I say to my organization, to the leaders?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and just to, be clear, I get paid by CARF when I do a survey, but that's about it. But I'm not an ambassador for them. But I will tell you that having been with them for the time I have seen it evolve. So you're right that it has evolved. It is evolving from a cultural competency plan based standard, which means that essentially, if you have a plan, then you meet the standard. And it's evolving to one of and it's really what we're all talking about. What are the actions that you're taking? So you say you have a committee. What are the outcomes? What are the actions actually being taken in that evolution? Having said that, there are many other accrediting bodies and educational opportunities for organizations, whether it's through SAGE, SAGE USA, whether it's through the International Well Building Institute. They have debuted last fall a health equity rating for organizations that really focus on the employee side of the employee experience, not just from a design standpoint, from a programmatic standpoint. So there are other resources out there that could perhaps supplement what you're doing with CARF, but at the end of the day, the CARF standard really is the standard, and much of the standard thus far has been not very much DEI. And so getting, above and past that is going to probably take consistently doing something beyond what the standard is calling for. Monica, did I answer your question?
Give me a good place to start. Yes, thank you.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Meg, I'm seeing some questions in the chat, so I don't know if you're seeing those or not, but if you could call them out, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. So from Paul Padilla, it's aside from the depth of culture added to the community, how do you engage the board to accept the changes?
Mm, boy, well, no, we're all colleagues here. I mean, that's I think there's some, as they say, red flags. If you don't have term limits, I don't know I don't know how to get you started. That to me, that's the floor. And not because of anything other than the fact that if we're talking about having differences in perspectives, the ability for someone to stay on a board indefinitely is the antithesis of that. The other thing I would offer is it's the shared learning piece. I think that there's an aspect of this where not by necessarily choice all the time, boards are not thinking about this issue beyond what is the CEO doing about it, as opposed to what is the board learning about governance and what it takes to be a good fiduciary, and how do you infuse diversity within that governance structure. So, two things I would offer. One is starting with what you have, which is at least transparently putting down what are we saying, who are we saying we are as a board? What's our identity? If somebody looks at us on our page, if someone goes and reads our bios, like what is a snapshot of what this board is, and then what's in our mind missing, which is a different conversation than what's missing, but what do we identify what's missing? And the last thing, you can call me as well. I love talking to boards because I can say the things you can't. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to that courageous conversation. Because as I said at the top of our chat, I cringe when I say this, but it's the truth that many organizations will be just fine occupancy wise if they don't have a serious eye towards an inclusion strategy. It's just that they will remain what they are and start to look like an outlier within our industry.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Marvell.
Any other questions in the chat, Meg?
Not at the moment.
Cool.
I do have a question for you. Oh, wait,
Go
here's
for
one.
it.
I'm going old school with the actual hand. So what I think was really good that you're talking about is the upside, right? So regardless of whether you sit on the whole equation of everything, I think what you said was, hey, in 40, here's where we're going demographically. So how do you put together a scenario that says, okay, here's the graph, here's what we're going to do, here's the short-term gain, here's the long-term gain, and here's where as an organization you want to do. Plus, I think culturally we're going to be a lot more mixed then, hopefully as well. So I think that's just happening. So how do you set up an argument, regardless of where you sit on the social scale, but how do you set an argument that says, hey, this is where we're going. Here's how it can increase your bottom line. How do you just make a pure dollar argument? Because if I'm an architect. So if I have a not-for-profit client, they're more socially based, I guess I would say, in the decisions and why they do stuff. If I have a for-profit client, it really comes down to the pro forma and the economics of it. Now with the way that organizations are getting funded and then the requirements from the banks on the funds, that definitely helps on that side. But still, if I have a win-win that says, hey, here's why we're doing this. Hey, here's why when you do a market study and you look at that stuff, here's the upside of that. So, and I have one other question after that, but I was curious about your answer on that one.
So if I understand correctly, so the question is how do you look at how do you make the business case for that inclusion strategy, and noting that the demographics are changing, but how do you make that jump with talking with a potential client? I still think it just comes down to the data and really trending out. Well, the most succinct way I've ever said it, Greg, was this, is that 2040, 2050, and then not far away, I mean, things that are being built right now will need to be repositioned around that time. Okay, so the designs right now really do matter. But if we continue to kind of keep the status quo, and that means building in certain geographies and not others, doing market studies and feasibility studies that aren't as inclusive as they need to be in order to capture that there's a more diverse market there than perhaps sometimes it shows, then I think we end up with kind of a difficult scenario for making any type of case statement, because the reasons the organizations you work with are doing what they're doing is because there's a market for it, there's a business for it. And I would say that the numbers show that there is a market for being more inclusive, and there's a market for inclusion strategy. If we're talking about a 25 million jump in 65 plus individuals in the next 16, 17 years, and over half of that are made up of individuals that by and large our industry does not serve, meaning Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ. I mean, that to me, that's the case statement. That's the business case right there. And the last piece I'll put to that is, even if you don't buy into that, the staff that you're going to be hiring do, and they will make a decision about working your organization based upon it.
Mhm. That's good input. And has anybody ever done an analysis, and I haven't seen it, to say, okay, what does that group, does the current, communities that we're providing, does it appeal to that group? Or if your goal is to do that, what might you adjust in your programming, your operations, your care, whatever that is, if you were to appeal to that group? It'd be interesting to see if there was any studies out there that defined, here's what this group would like to do, because there's stuff like we're doing in Indian community, so we're purposely designing it to appeal to that group there, and which means they'll like that hopefully more than they would your regular community. So I just didn't even know if there's any studies there, or if there's a way to do a study that would further enhance maybe your topic.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of what you're talking about, Greg. I mean, from a larger study that where we would target from let's say just run-of-the-mill market feasibility study, I've not seen someone chop it up that way. It doesn't mean it can't be done, and I think it needs to be, but yeah, you give me some homework, because now I'm really curious to see what may be out there. So I'll track you down if I find the information. So
let's reach out to Margaret at Promatura. She loves good things like this. Let's see if Margaret can tackle it. Thank you, sir.
So Marvell, I'd like to, since you mentioned design, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you be interested in talking briefly about what the development you're working on?
Oh, sure. So very briefly, I mean, because it's pre-development. So we all know what that means. It's not a project till it's a project, but but we myself and working with a design firm that actually specializes and focuses on intergenerational living. And the project is a potential project is a collaboration with a children's home, essentially a foster home. And they have a few different critical aspects that would really help them. One, they're finding that their service of LGBTQ youth is lacking because it's new to them, and they are looking for a programmatic approach that could help support LGBTQ youth. One of those resources could be seniors, older adults that are a part of the community. That could be that resource. And we've had other kind of notions of it, but the idea being that we would actually create a community on that campus on some additional acreage they have, and make it a truly intergenerational community. Not a novel idea. Bridge Meadows out west in Portland, I think Bastion down in New Orleans, and actually Two Life with their Treehouse program in Massachusetts as well. So, the idea behind it is our model to bring to scale is identifying where the need is for older adult housing, identify where the need might be for a historically marginalized group, and see where the intersectionality is, and then create community from it. So that's our current project is a partnership with that foster home.
I think it's fascinating, and can't wait to hear more about it.
So yeah, every once in a while someone will ask me what's the meaning behind the name. So if you're curious, maybe that'll be one way for us to wrap up. I'm so sorry. I'm getting over a cold. So, so W. Lawson. So, gosh, anybody Marvel comics fan, like that, maybe, or maybe you watch some of the movies, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, yeah, just go along with me. And so many times, growing up, like Kane, I had nicknames. And so, Captain Marvel is not a bad nickname, but my name is Marvell. It's spelled differently, as 2 L's instead of 1. Maybe neither here nor there. But Captain Marvel is a real, superhero in the Marvel universe, comics, one of the oldest ones out there, yada yada. So, kind of the origin story behind Captain Marvel is that he was from Kree, and he was, there are 2 kinds of Kree. It doesn't matter what they are, but they're aliens. Purple-skinned and fair-skinned, and the fair-skinned Kree are considered lesser than. They're kind of lesser than a race, and so Captain Marvel came to Earth and was sent to Earth by the Kree to scout Earth out for potential colonization. So interesting about Captain Marvel is that is his hero name. And when he came to Earth, they mispronounced his name. He came to Earth and he helped in the first comic, helped out this army base that was under attack. And they said, oh, I saw that guy over there, that Captain Marvel, he's amazing. Captain Marvel's real name is actually Marvell. Marvell, if you look in the comic books, but also then in the Captain Marvel movie iteration of it, that version of the movie is a different Captain Marvel. Anyway, just like any good superhero, Captain Marvel, when he came to Earth and decided to stay and be a champion for Earth, needed an alter ego. And so he stumbled across someone that had tragically passed away, and that person's name was Dr. Walter Lawson. And so thus the name W. Lawson.
That's awesome.
Anybody tells Marvel, I'll kill you. No, no, I've actually been assured through a trademark attorney that I'm nowhere close to being in the realm of Marvel Comics, and that slight hint to Walter Lawson is not a trademark infringement. So that's the name of the book. That's the name of the company.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. I really appreciate you guys taking all this time. I tell you that there's 2 lines of work I'm doing right now. One is creating community, and the other is doing good. The doing good part of it is for organizations that are interested in tackling not just inclusion, but the fact that we have a real housing supports and services crisis going on right now. I help on a consultative basis here and there with a few clients ongoing. And if you're interested to learn more, website's right there, Meg left, and would love to chat with you for that or for other good reasons. So really appreciate you taking the time.
Marvell, thank you very much on behalf of Team Good People. You are most certainly a great person and good people, and thank you for everything. Everybody keep in touch. Thank you for your time. Take care.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everyone.
Signing off from
Thank
Power
you.
Stocks.